Well, good evening, members. Good evening to people online. Any members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device, please mute it to avoid feedback. Any remote participants, which we've got a couple on there from Grant Thornton, please do not use your camera and keep your microphone off unless you're called to speak. Ideally, as I say, do not use your camera facilities. This can affect the quality of the IT connection. The meeting may be recorded. Data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. Members accessing remotely. I don't see any members remotely, but should use their SBC or KCC laptop to participate virtually. If you join using the link on the website or mobile or tablet device, it's not always possible to identify you and you may not be recorded as in remote attendance. Please ask members to speak loudly and clearly into their microphones and to switch their microphones off after speaking, otherwise remote participants won't be able to hear the next speaker. So welcome members, officers and members of the public to the Audit Committee meeting. The following staff are in attendance, either remotely or in the chamber. Director of Resources Lisa Fillery, Head of Audit Partnership Catherine Woodward, Head of Finance and Procurement Claire Stanbury, Auditor and Systems Officer Georgia Harvey, Audit Delivery Manager Catherine Byford, Kelly McKenzie from Democratic Services, and we have, I believe, Uwa and Addy from Grant Thornton who are online. I can't see any other officers in attendance. So next, our members are familiar and aware of the emergency evacuation procedures. Yeah, basically follow me because I'll be the first one out the door.
I'll probably have to be the last, as the most senior officer in the building. I'll be there with them.
There is no planned evacuation this evening, so if the alarm does sound, it is a genuine alarm and should be treated as such. Should leave via the exits to my right or via the staircase by the lifts, and congregate in the assembly point in the car park as directed. I don't think there's anyone in attendance this evening that would need assistance to get out of the building. So are there any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Richard Palmer. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've had no apologies from Councillor Carnell. Okay, so formally register. Do members take the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of January 2025, minutes 570 to 576 as a correct record? Thank you, members. I'll sign those shortly. So are there any declarations of interest on any of the items on the agenda this evening, either pecuniary or non-pecuniary? No, thank you, members. So then we move straight on to agenda item number 5. Is that you, Cathy? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So agenda item 5 on page 5 of your agenda packs brings 2 documents for your approval today. So at the last meeting, hopefully you'll recall that we discussed implementations and changes required by the new Global Internal Audit Standards, and both of the documents in this agenda item have been refreshed or created from new as a result and to reflect the new standards that we have. So I'm going to talk briefly about the first of those documents, which is the Audit Charter. I'll then pause for questions on that, and then my colleague, Kath Byford, will introduce the second document, which is going to be the Internal Audit Strategy. Okay? So the Audit Charter isn't a new document to you. We used to have one. However, ours was out of date and did need updating, and the new standard has presented us an opportunity to do so. So on page 9 of your agenda packs, you can find the new Internal Audit Charter. So this is a formal document that details the internal audit's functions, our mandate, our organisational position, our reporting relationships, the scope of our work, the type of work, and other specifications. So within this document, you'll see sections covering the purpose of internal audit, the mandate, which is the legislation that provides us the authority for what we do, the independence, position and reporting relationships, so how we can provide that independence to you as a committee and to the public as well, and where we sit within the organisation and who we report to. Audit Committee responsibilities, my specific responsibilities as the head of the audit partnership, how we communicate to you, to other officers and to the public, the quality assurance and improvement programme, and the scope and types of the audit service. So the very last page of the Charter as well also requests that this document is approved by myself, the Chair of the Committee, and the Director of Resources and Section 151 Officer, which is Lisa. So hopefully you've had a chance to read through it, and I'm happy to take any questions on the Charter, and then I'll hand over to Kath for the strategy.
Thanks, Cathy. Questions, members? No? Okay, thank you. So it's over to your colleague, Kath.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm here to tell you about our new internal audit strategy. Internal audit has always been subject to standards that we must conform to, and over the last 2 years, standards have undergone significant review and update. So the new global internal audit standards, to which Cathy referred, finally came into force in January this year. And under Principle 9 of the global standards, internal audit are now required to develop a strategy. So there's no set format for this. So we wanted to make it as accessible and as engaging as possible. We wanted to reflect the enthusiasm we feel in what we do and what we want to achieve. So hopefully you've all had a chance to have a look at it. Some salient points to note on page 22 of your reports pack. We want to make our purpose and vision really clear. So internal auditors aim to add value by identifying opportunities for improvement, not only in terms of strengthening the control environment and reducing risk, but also encouraging best practice and more efficient ways of working, and that's something that we do really try and do. Page 23 explains how the work we do aligns with organisational objectives, so how we work with stakeholders at all levels to create a meaningful and relevant internal audit plan. Creating this strategy gave us a really good opportunity to reflect on where we are now and what we'd like to achieve. So our SWOT and maturity analysis has given us confidence that we have got a solid foundation to work from. We have a really passionate internal audit team, a great team ethic, and we do have the same collective aims. So page 25 and 26 show an extract from the Institute of Internal Auditors self-assessment tool for maturity analysis. And you'll see that we've assessed our current status overall as at the managed level. So that shows that we fully meet requirements of each principle. There's still a little bit of work to do there, but our strategy shows how we'd like to achieve this. Again, I think it's really important to say here that doing this SWOT analysis and reviewing this maturity analysis has given us a really good confidence of where we are now, particularly in view of the resource issues and the challenges that we've faced in the last year or two. We use audit management software, which provides consistency, helps us to comply with the standards, and we're regularly approached for advice and guidance, so I definitely think we're becoming that trusted advisor. However, as the strategy shows, there's always more that we can do to improve. So pages 27 through 31 outline our critical success factors, our skills and resource analysis, and our strategic roadmap. So 2 key elements to note here. We've built flexibility into the audit plan to accommodate emerging risks. So when Cathy talks to you about the audit plan for 25-26, you'll see some of the way we've addressed that. Another point to note is the resource issues that we've had on the team. As I say, it's been a really good opportunity for us to review what we've got and what we need to do to improve how we recruit. What we're aiming to do is move towards career graded posts. We've already started the wheels in motion to do that. That means that we'll look to recruit at any level from grade 8 right through to grade 11, so from the trainee level right up to the senior auditor level, depending on the skills and knowledge and behaviours that each of those dictates. We've made that really clear now. And I think that will help us in terms of recruitment. We want to grow our own talent, and we've been really successful at recruiting at those lower levels. I think it's a realistic timetable within the roadmap, and as I've just said, some of the actions are already underway. We've placed our work on local government reorganisation at 2026, but naturally we'll support the council as required over the next few years. We haven't gone for long-term goals purely because of local government reorganisation. I think it's important that we focus on the short and medium-term goals at the moment. So we know it's an ambitious strategy, but we do believe it's achievable. We've conducted a lot of analysis, review and self-reflection. We've identified our goals and the actions we need to take to get there. We know that there will be challenges, but we're really happy that we've now got a clear strategy going forward. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take those now.
Councillor Noe.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a comment, really. The Mid-Kent internal audit strategy. The document here, I just noticed that it is quite busy in places, and I'm wondering if it's been looked at for accessibility.
The honest answer for that is no, it hasn't been looked at for accessibility. The document is most importantly for our team, so it's our strategy going forward, and it's for members. But you're right. I mean, it's a new version of the strategy. We can certainly look at that going forward.
Yeah, I just noticed that like some of the color combinations, the white against the light colors, and some of the designs, it does make it a bit difficult to read. It might be something to look at.
Yes, thank you. We'll take that on board. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you. Councillor Booth, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I didn't comment on the first document because I think they're both critical documents to the forward progress of this council. But this one I've just got a couple of questions on. The first one, page 22, can you give us some benchmarking as to where we're going to find the visions of sustainable economic growth and better homes? Where does that sit within the documentation for the borough as a question? And I am concerned with regards to the timetable on 30 and 31. My concern is, as you've eloquently said, with the reorganisation of local councils. We should be and must be in a very, very strong place to survive and get the best crops, I think, with some of the potential partners during that reorganisation. And I'm acutely aware of the troubles for getting quality staff. I understand that. And that's going to be one of those other significant roles, particularly in this document. So personally, I seek reassurance that these short and medium term goals are going to be hit. And I think as far as, through you, Chairman, as far as as far as audit is concerned, we need to keep seeing this and keep getting the feedback on where we are on these key dates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so in terms of monitoring progress against the strategy, yeah, that's something we do intend to do. We'll bring it to Audit Committee and tell you where we are and where progress against the strategy. I think that's really, really important. In terms of our purpose, that's aligning with the strategic objectives of all the councils that we serve. And I think through Cathy's delivery of audit planning, that's where we support that vision in the audit work that we undertake. In terms of resourcing, as I say, we're already starting on that. The career grade matrices have already been constructed. They're going through for approval at job evaluation panel the first week in May. And that will give us the opportunity, if approved, which we're hoping they are, to start doing recruitment at all grades. So that will really open a lot bigger pool of talent for us. And in terms of recruitment, I say it's one step at a time. You know, that's the first step for us, was doing the career grade matrix, which we've done. It will go in front of the panel. If approved, then we've got the green light really to start thinking about recruitment. But the great thing being, we can offer posts at different grades. We're not restricted, which is something we've definitely found a problem in the past. I think Cathy would agree.
I don't think that would have been quite proper, Lisa. Before I move on to agenda item number 6, I'd just like to inform members that I've been asked by Lisa to slightly rejig the agenda. So I will be bringing what should be agenda item 11 forward, which will be then taken after agenda item number 7, because agenda item 11 and what is the current 8 come pretty much together. So thank you, members. So we move on then to agenda item number 6. I think that's you again, Cathy. Yeah?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this agenda item, the internal audit plan for 25-26, this should hopefully also support some of the comments that were made in the previous audit item about trying to give that reassurance to the committee about the work of internal audit and how we propose to do that as well, with some of the challenges and possible changes that are coming up in the next few years as well. So in the previous items that you've been presented, we've spoken a lot about the new standards and how we deliver our function. So the audit plan is what we're actually going to deliver, whereas the others were how we were going to deliver. And this also is how we get that statutory assurance that's required as part of the Accounts and Audits Regulations 2015. So our approach to constructing this year's audit plan has been different to previous years. So given the level of change that the organisation has been through in the past and that is expected over the short to medium term, we've taken a slightly different tact this year. So the plan that I'm presenting to you today is trying to strike a balance between defined expectations of deliverables plus flexibility, which is what we may need coming up in the next few, certainly in the next 12 months and in definitely the next 24 to 36 months as well. So on page 44 of your report, this highlights some of the changes that we're making to one of continual risk assessment approach rather than the previous model where we sort of did it once a year and then created our plan based on that. We're going to be continually focusing and looking on that. So we're going to be meeting a lot more frequently with heads of service directors, with the management teams as well, and to trying to make sure that feeding into the risk management process as well, we're assessing what's relevant now and at specific points in time. Because if we create a plan, one of the things we found is we create a plan and then 10 months down the line, some of the things we put in those plans are not actually that useful to be audited at this moment in time. There may be something that's more relevant for us to consider. So that's one of the reasons that we've done this. So it allows us to respond to changing priorities, and LGR is a big driver for that. And at the moment, there's so many unknowns that we really don't know what the impact on the organisation is going to be. But what we don't want to do is compromise the level of assurance that is necessary for us to provide to give that annual audit opinion. So page 45 is a list of essential audits. So these are audits that we will complete no matter what. There's going to be no change throughout the 12 months. These are ones that really need to happen. So there are 9 audits here, and they are what we're calling mandatory. What we then did was we have assessed the rest of the audit universe. Our audit universe is quite significant. There are over 100 items within that universe, so it's quite a large field to pick from, and that we need to assess. So what we've done is we've looked at everything that we could possibly audit and determined what other audits we want to include in the plan where we can. So when we complete our assessments, we look at things like the corporate risk registers, we look at other compliance requirements, national and local issues, external auditors' views, our own organisational knowledge, past audit results and any outstanding actions from previous audits as well. We get input from heads of service, directors, and identify other themes. We look at the annual governance statement, we look at members' feedbacks, and I always review all policy and resources committees and other decisions that are made across the council, and strategic priorities as well. So once we've assessed all of those things, we then categorise and prioritise them. And we look at things such as the financial impact on the organisation, the confidence we have in the existing processes that are there, reputational significance, susceptibility to change and to fraud, and other regulatory compliance that could help support what it is that we're doing. So after going through this process, what that's given us is a list of additional audits, which are on page 47 of your plans. So these are ranked either high or medium risk audits. So what we will do for our audit plan this year, we will deliver everything that is essential. We will then start with the high risk audit that we want to do next. And then with the resources that we have, we will ensure that we cover the breadth that we need to deliver our audit plan, and we'll pick the remainder from the medium list. So it may not be everything on this plan, but it's going to be as much as we need to give that annual audit opinion through it. So the final thing that I want to talk about on this plan is page 51, which details our resources. So this is the number of days that we have to deliver our audits. So just for information, obviously, Kath was talking earlier in our strategy about our resourcing. So we are looking to go out to recruit, but we've also just gone out to tender for some contractors to support us, because while we're going through a recruitment process and we know we're going to potentially have trainee auditors, we're going to have a gap. And so we're using some we want to use contractors. The contractors we've used over the last 2 years have been really, really good. They're a company called Veritao, who are a local government tech company, who, fortunately for us, don't charge the earth, but I didn't say that. But it means that they're able to, because they're local government auditors, they know our business and they can work with us very well. They know what it is they're doing, and they have specialisms in the same way that we have. So there are some good contractors out there that we can use to help support us while we're going through to get the strategy to the point where we want it to be, but to make sure that we can still deliver sufficient work to deliver the audit plan. So I'll pause there. Happy to take any questions that anybody's got and any other assurance I can provide.
Thanks, Cathy. Councillor Booth?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to applaud you on utilising external resourcing. Certainly in this day and age, it's something that we really need to do, and yeah, hopefully we can get those quality people as well. Couple of points on your, 2 points on the essential annual assurance needs. There's one there that scares the pants off of me, which is health and safety, which is property services. Absolutely one of those really, really important items. You're probably, in many walks of life, health and safety trumps everything. So if we're not on top of that, we've got serious issues. The only other one that worries me on there, it's not been assessed, is development management. When we know that this borough in particular is under extraordinary pressure for large-scale development, if we've not got that absolutely watertight, again, we do leave ourselves potentially exposed, I would suggest. Moving on to page 47, the obvious one, waste collection contract. If there is one particular service this council can deliver that is going to absolutely annihilate our residents, it's the waste contract. It's the only one that people ever remember. So again, it's there as a high. It's something we need to have a complete and absolute focus on in my capacity. Apart from that, Chairman, yeah, I'm really happy.
Thank you. That's really good to hear. Just to sort of give it just a little bit of a feedback. Yeah, health and safety. So on that one, it's an audit that we do across all of our partners. For the previous year at one of our other partners, we've used a contractor to help deliver that because they have NEBOSH qualified auditors. So one of the things that we are doing this year is training somebody within our team to become a NEBOSH qualified auditor, so that you can guarantee that that audit will be delivered to the highest of standards. Development management audit, so that was last undertaken in 2019-20. The reason it was not assessed was because during the course of that audit, COVID hit, which obviously impacted on the delivery of that audit work. So that's why it has a not assessed rating there. given that time that has passed. That's obviously why it's on this essential list that we must do it. So there's no question that these audits will not be delivered. I've already met with some of the heads of service and got some of these scheduled in, and you'll be pleased to know the waste contract collection audit has been scheduled in, so that is coming up quarter 3. So September, October we're looking to start.
Thank you. Councillor Worcester.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it was a brilliant report. I really like reports like this. It shows really good forward thinking, and it's nice to see that Swale's able to change its processes to react to the situation it finds itself in, which is good news, I think. What I just wanted to ask quickly was that I take Councillor Booth's point that it's good we're bringing in outside resourcing, but what steps are we actually taking to make sure that we're going to keep that to a minimum, to make sure that we're getting the best use out of our council tax? Because obviously outside resourcing may be more expensive than providing our own staff. It's great to know that we're pushing for our own staff, absolutely. And the second part of that question is, if you don't manage to recruit for the roles that are needed, have we given you enough resources to make sure that potentially any extra outside resourcing is available if we don't manage to recruit the people that we need to supplement your team? Or, for example, if one of your team goes down poorly or something, have we got enough in the budget to make sure that we're keeping to your timetable, if that makes sense?
Yeah, the one thing I would like to say about this is that Cathy has managed to deliver our audits since she joined by using both her team, the vacancies that she's got, and used the external contractors, and she's come in within budget every time. So she has made very good use of our money in the balance that she's got between her own staff, the vacancies, and the external contractors.
So just to echo that, in a past life, I'm a public sector accountant, so hence my need to keep within budget. And as Lisa says, what I've been able to deliver, I've been able to deliver within budget. I have not had to stray outside. One of the benefits of a partnership is any costs that we do go in over are spread 4 ways, so they are generally quite minimal if we do. But as yet, I haven't had to do that, or haven't had to go to the Shared Services Board, as is, to request additional funds. In terms of recruitment, so the reason that we're using contractors for the next 2 years is to allow us the capacity to bring new people in and to train them up to the standard, so that we will not need to use contractors in the future. That's the plan. Obviously, we don't know what LGR is going to present and how that's going to impact us as a team. So that's why the audit strategy, having that previous document we spoke about in place, is really useful to us to develop the service. And obviously, one of the things that we will always try to do is to make sure that we can deliver enough to provide the annual audit opinion. One of the things I do is work very closely with all of the heads of service to try and find ways that we can seek additional sources of assurance to bring that work to the committee, as well as whatever it is that we do from an internal audit function as well, so that we've got many strings to the bow of assurance that we can share with the audit committee as well. So if it gets to the point that I need to come to committee and say we're in trouble, I will do that. And that's one of the things, obviously, the Charter explains, and your terms of reference explains, if I need to come to you as a committee and to go through these things, then that's what we'll do. But as it stands, we're not in a bad place.
Just really quickly, Chair, I just also wanted to say that I found that one of the most exciting things, that you were looking at upskilling and moving staff through, because I think as a local authority, and I do it with my small town council, I see local authorities are exemplary employers, and it's lovely if you've got staff that start with you and they gain qualifications and they gain experience. Whenever they decide to finish with you or move on to another job, or whatever happens, it's really nice to know that we're using that experience as a council to upskill and give people like value for being here, if that makes sense. So it's really exciting.
Okay, members, any further questions? Thank you. So the recommendations, I'll take recommendation 1 first as a single entity, to approve the internal audit and assurance plan for 25-26. This includes delegating to the head of audit partnership authority to keep the plan current as set out in the appendix. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Booth. Seconder? Councillor Gibson, thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you, members. And then recommendation 2 and 3, I'll take those both together to note the head of Audit Partnership's view that the partnership currently has sufficient resources to deliver the plan and a robust annual audit opinion. And 3, that the head of Audit Partnership assurance that the plan is compiled independently and without inappropriate influence from management. Do I have a proposal? Councillor Booth and seconder, please. Councillor Harrison, thank you. Those in favour? Thank you, members. Unanimous. So we move on now to agenda item 7, and that's you again, I think, Cathy.
Good evening, members. This report seeks to provide assurance that the Council is operating an effective risk management process. To support this, the report provides an update on risk management for the last financial year, 24-25. The report starts on page 53 of the agenda pack, with the main content starting on page 57. Before I get into the report, the format of this has changed since it was last presented, and the main changes are as follows. Summary narrative on the main changes to risk is now included, and this is on page 59. And the inclusion of a dashboard to show all risk matrices is on a single page, and this facilitates comparative data analysis, and that's page 60. And then lastly, a table to show the changes to the unmitigated ratings at the end of each quarter for each of the corporate risks is on page 69. In terms of the main content of the report, page 58 sets out the standard information regarding the Council's risk register, including the relevant extracts from the risk management framework, which supports how risks are assessed. Page 59 shows an overview of the Council's corporate and operational risks, as well as actions for the current financial year. At the time the report was collated, there were 14 corporate risks. However, since the report was published, an additional risk has been added to the corporate risk register regarding the local government reorganisation. This risk aligns with similar approaches from other Mid-Kent authorities and will be included next time an update is provided to you. Of note, a review of the corporate risk register as well as the risk management framework are due over the coming months, and more details on this will be circulated in due course to ensure you are involved in the process. Page 60 shows matrices to demonstrate the changes in mitigated and unmitigated risk ratings, and then a copy of the corporate risk register, including details on the progress for implementing the planned controls, is on pages 61 to 68. And lastly, page 69 shows changes to the corporate risks over each quarter, and there have been no changes to any unmitigated risk ratings over the past year. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Georgia. Questions, members? Comment? Councillor Gibson.
Only very briefly, just to kind of confirm my understanding that on 60, the reason it somewhat looks like the register has got to a worse place because there is more red than there was previously is because we've added risks. And so the kind of follow-on question from that check is, do we know which risks we've added? So we know why the RAG rating has got slightly more challenging. Thank you.
So this reflects all the changes over the past year, so it hasn't all happened at once. It has been a gradual increase. Some of them will be because new risks have been added, and hopefully they should have been captured on the page above. So you'll see there's been a couple of changes to corporate risks under section 4.2. So you'll see there's a couple of changes there, and then there's a similar bit at 4.3 for operational risks, so you'll see those. Some of it will be caused because over the past year or so, obviously Swale joined the shared services for Revs and Bends, and so that resulted in quite a lot of changes because the risks did change significantly. So that some of that will then be reflected in the position from last year to now. And on top of that, there has just been some general changes as services have reassessed the ratings of their own risks, and that's just happened over the course of the year.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just on that same page, on page 60, the previous report, should they not say 2024? For both the corporate risk previous report and operational risk previous report, they currently say March 2025. Okay.
Sorry, I keep turning my microphone off when I should turn it on and on when it's... Councillor Harrison.
Just a comment really that it just shows the difference once you do mitigate to those risks, because if you just looked at the initial one, it'd be, oh my God, pandemonium, etc., etc. But you know, clearly our service managers know their business, and that is how they are able to mitigate those risks right down in some cases. I think it's just shows how good they are. Thanks. How on top of their game they are.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Harrison. Right, so the recommendation is that the Audit Committee considers and where necessary provides comments on the operation of the risk management framework. Do I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Booth. And seconder, Councillor Harrison. Thank you. All those in favour? Yeah, unanimous. Right. Thank you, members. So now we rearrange the agenda slightly, bringing up agenda item 11. I'll hand over to Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you. So this report is an update on the position of the statement of accounts that we brought to you for sign-off in January. If you recall from that report, the auditors hadn't quite finished their final audit testing, and as a result of that testing, they found findings on the work that was done at Bourne Place, which was classified as an asset under construction in the accounts back from 2017-18 up until 23-24, sorry, which actually has now been handed over to KCC. From what I understand, because this predates me, the original classification was as a result of the fact that we were unsure whether KCC were going to adopt the works around the public realm at Bourne Place, and so if they weren't, then the asset would remain ours and would remove from an asset under construction into our infrastructure asset. As it happened, by the time the project had finished and final handover happened of those assets in 22-23, there was some misunderstanding on the assets that were classified within that category when we closed the accounts 22-23. And so the assets weren't written out and handed over to KCC in that year, but we picked it up in the 23-24 accounts and did so then. The auditors, on doing their final audit testing for that area, picked up that their opinion was that we should have done it in 22-23, and so we should restate the accounts for 22-23 and unwind all of the work that we'd done in 23-24 to end up in exactly the same position as we were as at the 31st of March 24. So we have taken the decision not to unwind that, to accept the opinion of the auditors, that with their accept for opinion, which Addy will explain a little more detail in a second, to leave it everything as it was, because of the work to unwind it, restate everything, did add significant risk and complexity to a misstatement of the accounts again, to no discernible change to the final position. So that is why we've had to bring the accounts. So the accounts that you signed in January remain unchanged, but the audit opinion has been slightly modified to take account of that one area. All the other areas that were outstanding at that point have also been agreed and signed off. But the one area that they are reporting back on, as per the updated audit findings report, is the public realm assets that have been transferred to KCC. Apologies, that was quite a technical, boring thing to explain.
Right, before I take questions, members, I'd like to bring in Addy. You okay there, Addy?
Good evening, members and officers. Can I confirm you can hear me okay?
Could hear you fine.
Okay, brilliant. I'll keep my camera off as requested at the beginning. As Lisa mentioned, she has actually adequately covered all of the key changes from the general meeting. And as said, I can confirm that the work that's where I stand as of January, we've completed all of that work, and and they issued the modified opinion on the 27th of February of this year. As Lisa mentioned, in terms of, excuse me, in terms of the accountant treatments, I do agree with her that actually the end position is unchanged. However, as auditors, we will not be purists if we can say to you exactly how the accountant treatment should be made. And that's what we set out in the audit plan that's in front of you. And clearly, where the changes have not been made, because it is in line with our approach where it is a material change, albeit it doesn't affect your bottom line, we're duty bound to bring that to your attention. And where it hasn't been amended, we've issued that except for qualification on the 27th of February. But other than that, happy to report everything else. There was no other material issues that we did identify, some minor changes that's the team amended, and others, some unadjusted amendments. But again, that's all set on the report. They were not significant that I need to bring to your attention. The only other final thing I'll add is in terms of fees, there is an additional fee as a result of the additional work we've undertaken. We're currently having discussions with Lisa before we finalise that. Once we finalise that, we'll obviously bring that back to the committee, and all fees are subject to approval by the PSAA. I'll pause there to take any questions.
Thank you, Eddie. I've got Councillor Harrison first.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I read this report and I understood it quite clearly, and I thought to myself, okay, so when we did it, it was correct, as happens an awful lot of time. You don't then go back and do like 3 years worth of work to redo something that was right at the time. So I absolutely support the officers in saying, well, no, we're not going to change it. You know, let's make a note. But I did note in Grant Thornton's report all those red circles, except for. Now, I have sat on this audit committee, apart from that brief period as a cabinet member, I have sat on, well, indeed, I helped set up this audit committee all those many moons ago. And I just thought, no offence to Grant Thornton, but I've seen the best of them, Audit Commission, you name it. And I thought this is just being nitpicky. I know they've got to do it, and in pure terms, you know, that, I mean, this is what their job is. But from my point of view, it's being nitpicky. I'm quite comfortable with what the officers have done and their explanation, and that's the end of the matter. You know, we can't keep, well, no, it might have been right at the time you've done that, but it's changed now. Oh, I know, let's go back and rewrite history. No, let's just make a note and move on. So I'm very comfortable with what our staff have done, but I have noted the accepteds that Grant Thornton have noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Any further questions from members? So we then go back to the recommendation on page 109, that members note the external auditor's updated audit findings as report appendix 1. Thank you. Proposed by Councillor Booth, seconded by Councillor Harrison. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, members. Right, so we now go back to the agenda as should be. Agenda item number 8. You should have a separate agenda pack for that. So, Lisa?
Yep, so very briefly I'll introduce this because this report is mainly the GT one. It's their plan, like we've just had Kathy's plan for 25-26 internal audit. This is the plan for the 24-25 audit of the financial statements and the value for money audit that Grant Thornton have only just finished the last one of, and we're starting again already. But this lays out the deadlines that we now have to adhere to with the backstop dates that the government have put in place to try and catch up the unaudited accounts, of which we don't fall into that category, but the timing has impacted on some of the audit timings for everybody else. Luckily, we're in the first phase again this year, so this plan brings us back to starting the audits over the summer, with an aim to hoping to bring you the audit opinion by the end of the year, October time, if we can, back in line with how we've been doing things for the past few years, except not last year. So, Addy, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Thank you, Lisa. I'll just add a few bits. Very quickly, just introduce myself again. I'm Addy Yerinde. I'll be your engagement lead for 24-25 going forward. And Matt will finish his stint as your engagement lead up until the February opinion that he issued. Going forward, in terms of the plan, as Lisa mentioned, I set out the plan for the 24-25 year. We called it an indicative plan because at the time we issued it, there were still some areas that we were finishing on the planning. That's largely done, and if there's any issue arises from just finishing the last few bits of the work that we need to do, we'll come back to you by exception. But I'm pretty confident that the plan as it stands is unlikely to change as we move into the field work. In terms of new things that's coming to need to be aware of, on this supplementary pack on page 17, we set out the new change in standards, which is the IFRS 16 for leases, and that's new for coming into this year, mandatory from 24-25. Members may recall that this has been deferred for a number of years, and it's finally makes its way as a mandatory change this year. So that's one area that's you will see additional disclosures in your draft statements when that's produced in a few months' time. Page 20 of your pack sets out the key significant risks, and that's members will be familiar with. It's fairly similar to previous years. And just very briefly, they are management override of controls, valuation of land and buildings, and valuation of your pension fund liabilities. The other minor change to refer to yourselves are in terms of materiality. So we set the planning materiality this year at 1.85 million, which is 2.5% of prior year gross expenditure. This is a slight increase from last year where it was 2% of the gross expenditure. And similarly, in terms of any uncorrected misstatements, we'll share that with you in our audit findings report which we'll bring to the October Audit Committee. And anything below the trivial level, which was set at 92.5, we'll just refer to as a line item. In terms of value for money, which covers our other responsibilities, our planning is in progress with that, and happy to confirm that at this stage we have not identified any significant value for money risk, and we'll continue to update that up until we conclude our auditor's annual reports, which will also come to the October meeting. As Lisa mentioned, in terms of the logistics, the field work will take place between July and September, with a view that we will do the sign-off of the opinion after the Audit Committee in October, and we expect that we have the necessary resources to ensure that happens, and we'll continue to work with Lisa and the team to ensure that we'll stick to that time frame. Final thing to add is that we set out the fees, which is the scale fee for the auditor set out by PSAA, which is £184,319. I should flag that this does not include any work we do on the IFRS 16, which is new for this year and was not anticipated at the time PSAA set the scale fee. And the final thing is to just confirm that we continue to be independent, and there are no independence issues that I need to bring to the committee's attention. I will pause there and take any questions on the 24-25 audit plan.
Thanks, Addy. Councillor Booth?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Addy, for that. Just referring to page 42, I don't know, I've missed it in the other parts of the report, but you identify under financial sustainability there is one improvement recommendation, and on governance you've got two. Can you direct me to where they're identified in this pack?
So this will be from the annual auditor's annual report from prior 23-24. So that's where that's coming from. So those improvement recommendations we will routinely follow up in 24-25, alongside reviewing the 3 standard areas that we are required to do under the NAO directive.
So are they detailed in this pack? They're not then?
No, you've had them already in the audit report that came with the 23-24
Okay.
report, so we can recirculate.
Not being difficult, but if you could do that, just so we've got that. Thank you. Thanks, Addy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Any Councillor Gibson, sorry, first, and then Councillor Thompson.
I think it is not a question, more a comment. Very thorough report and very nicely done, and clearly based on a template I'm assuming you're providing to a number of councils, which is clearly sensible and appropriate. But my small piece of feedback would be, given Swale's huge photogenic capability, it might not be beyond the wit of man, and probably better for our residents if some of the stock photos included Swale's beautiful natural landscapes and heritage assets, which might add to some of our engagement with them going forward. But thank you for a very thorough report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I'd just like to highlight on page 7, it says about the housing crisis. I felt that the use of the language isn't really appropriate because it's inaccurate. It's saying it's difficult to find land for new housing developments. That's not actually the case. There's 3,000 hectares of brownfield site. It isn't a case of finding them, it's a case of having ways to make them be used. And the other section that comes up is local authorities therefore face the challenge of providing adequate housing and balancing environmental sustainability, but that's because new requirements around net zero and other environmental considerations make it more complex to get planning permission. I feel that undermines, because it doesn't actually really make it any more complex, but it makes it easier for someone to undermine planning. So I think a lot of that language probably needs to be changed somehow, because it makes it seem as if it's hard for developers to get planning. And that isn't the case if they come with appropriate planning. But at the moment, we're getting profiteering rather than appropriate planning. So for me, the one around social housing, we hit the issue in Faversham not long ago, where it wasn't the fact that it was difficult to get housing, it was the fact we didn't have a provider for the social housing. So that needs to be put in there rather than the land, because the way that's worded makes it very focused for a developer to say we've got issues, therefore we can't find land, therefore let's build on grade 1. So I think there needs to be an amendment somehow to that language there. That's all I've got to say, really.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Addy, your response to that?
I'm happy to go away and have a look at the wording in both instances, and we'll come back to the committee with updates on that.
Lovely, thank you very much. Any further questions from members? Okay, so we then come back to the recommendation that members are asked to note the annual audit plan presented by Grant Thornton. Do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Booth, a seconder. Councillor Gibson, thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, members. Thank you to Grant Thornton's officers for being on the meeting this evening. So we now go back to the agenda as scheduled, with agenda item number 9. Is that you, Claire? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Q3 report providing you with an update on the performance of our Treasury Management function for April to December 2024. It's important that we have an effective Treasury Management function to ensure that we manage our finances and cash flows in an effective way, whilst ensuring risks are controlled as far as possible. During the quarter covering October to December, the Bank of England base rate reduced to 4.75%, whilst inflation remained above the 2% target. For Swale, the high interest rate means that we continue to do well in terms of interest receipts on our short-term investments. And as these are higher than our borrowings, this is overall a positive position for us. Interest rates are still expected to fall over the next 18 months to a low of about 3.75%, so not hitting the incredibly low rates that we've seen for many years following the 2008 financial crash. Our borrowing remains largely on a relatively short-term basis, with some loans going over a year, but nothing beyond 2. And this is allowing us to manage the position as those rates fluctuate. During the 9 months to the end of December, the Council held borrowing of £10 million, and our average cash balances invested were £21.7 million, and that has remained pretty consistent with the last few years. Appendix 1 of the report shows the investment and borrowing balances as at the 31st of December, and Appendix 2 shows the performance of the Treasury function against the indicators that were agreed in the strategy in February 2024, and I'm happy to report that they were all within target. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Harrison, please.
I'd just like to say that I'm happy that our staff's performance is top of the board as usual on this particular area. Well done. No, mean it. You know, I wouldn't say it if I didn't. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Any further questions, members? No. Okay then, so the recommendations are, and I'll take them both together, to note the performance information in this report, and to note the prudential and treasury management indicators within this report. Do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Harrison, seconder. I'll take Councillor Thompson, thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you, members. So moving on then swiftly to agenda item 10. That's you again, Claire.
Yes. Thank you. So this report is the proposed accounting policies for 2024-25. The policies form part of our statement of accounts, and so they're usually brought before this committee as part of the accounts when they're published. From this year, we're bringing the proposed accounting policies to the Audit Committee ahead of time, ahead of completing the accounts, so that they can be specifically reviewed and approved. The policies are reviewed each year by myself and the Director of Resources to ensure they're in line with the Accounting Code of Practice and reflect any local circumstances and considerations from previous audit findings. There have been a few minor changes this year, and also a major change in relation to assets which we lease. So in terms of the minor changes, we are proposing to increase the potential useful life of intangible assets, which are usually software licenses, up to 15 years. That will allow us to more accurately reflect the time over which software is generally used at Swale. Similarly, IT equipment is also being increased up to 15 years for the same reason. This doesn't mean that all assets will be written down over a 15-year life. It will be decided on a case-by-case basis. So staff laptops, for example, will probably be given a 5-year life, while something like a printer or a scanner will be given a longer useful life to reflect how long they do tend to last. The accounting policies also refer to a discount rate that will be applied when calculating pension scheme liabilities. In the document here tonight, it's currently showing us 4.9%, which was the rate for 2023-24. That rate is not something that we calculate ourselves. It's provided to us by our actuaries, so it hasn't yet been provided for 24-25, and that will be updated in due course. So that may change by the time you see the final policies within the statement of accounts. The major change this year, as mentioned, is in relation to leases, and this is the change that Addy referred to around IFRS 16. So from 24-25, we have to account for all leased assets as finance leases. In the past, they could be treated as an operating lease, where the asset was not included on the balance sheet and the payments each year were treated as an expense. This change in requirement means that we will now need to recognise the leased assets in our balance sheet, but also the liability of the lease payments over the remaining time left on the lease. There are 2 exemptions to this, one being leases of less than 12 months, which is a mandatory exemption, and also the other being assets of low value. And for the purpose of our policy, we're proposing that low value is anything less than £10,000. That ties in with our de minimis limit on capital, so any spend below £10,000 we have historically not capitalised. All other accounting policies remain the same as they were for 2023-24. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Gibson, please.
Only a very quick one on the area around tech and software. And I think you were on the way to reassuring me, but then then stopped a bit short of where I would have liked us to get to, which is we surely are not using anything that's lasting 15 years. So I guess that's just a little bit more reassurance on some of that most tech is not being lifed that long, because really nothing works after 15 years.
Hardware, you're probably right. Potentially some scanners and things like that could. The software licenses in tangible assets, our finance system has been in place for 20 years. So they are kept up to date with upgrades and things like that, potentially, but the original license, which we've got on the asset register and showing in the balance sheet, could easily, less so these days, and the way things are moving to a software as a service kind of arrangement, but we want to make sure that we are accurately reflecting, or at least giving ourselves the possibility to accurately reflect that. It does tie back to what's in the one of the findings in the audit findings report, that we have a number of assets that are fully depreciated. The theory is that you depreciate an asset over the time in which you're using it and getting economic benefits from it. So we have charged those assets down, written them down to expenses over, say, a 5-year life, but we are still using them 5 years later. And so this gives us that room within the policies, I say, to more accurately reflect reality.
Thanks, Chair. Will these changes create very much more work for the staff?
Largely no. The lease requirement, which is something we don't have a choice about, it is an international requirement. It's creating a lot of work in this first year to understand the liabilities and calculate those liabilities. Going forward, we should then be able to kind of follow a set procedure each year. We'll know what those assets are. We'll have everything set out in a calculation already. So it shouldn't create a lot of extra work on an ongoing basis.
In terms of properties, though, I would presume that it's, I may be wrong, I would presume it's a case of saying to property, give me a list, and then you just put it in your bits. Bob's your uncle. That's providing property have got the stuff written down anywhere.
Largely, yes.
Yes, largely yes. Property have got the list. Claire then has to do a considerable amount of work on assessing the liability for the balance sheet provision of the assets that aren't at peppercorn rent. So the information is there. It's then the technical accounting calculations that Claire has had to do for year one. So most of the work has fallen to her on that for this year.
Thank you. Councillor Worcester.
Thanks, Chair. We've got a policy around our procurement that involves social elements to it. Is there anything that we do around disposal of assets with regards to social input? I mention this on quite a regular basis to schools, actually, because quite often they will look for a very good deal when they take assets on, especially around tech, actually, and that's what prompted me, actually, with Councillor Gibson's comments. But the disposal of assets is something that's quite interesting, that there is actually, even though we have downgraded the asset to something that we need to replace, that there could be some social movement in disposal of that asset to somewhere local that could actually get more mileage, especially around tech, actually, because a good example is council laptops. Mine doesn't have particularly good battery or anything like that, but to, for instance, a family that has a secondary school child that desperately needs a laptop that doesn't particularly need something with an amazing battery, is there anything in the council's policies around that social disposal potential? You could tell me absolutely not, and there's very good reasons why not.
I will say that most of our assets, by the time that they have come to the end of their useful life, we do get best value out of them ourselves, so there isn't much other value in them. I have got a feeling that IT do wipe them and do something with them. We'll find out.
It's really what really brought it home was when COVID hit, that I went through a similar thing with a school that got rid of all of their laptops on this sort of scheme that went for £7 a unit to a company that then sold it on or decommissioned or whatnot. And then the next year when COVID hit, we were obviously desperate for any sort of laptops to go back into school. And it's really interesting how one group of people might say, actually, things are at the end of their life, but there could be another group of people that might get a good use out of something that we no longer need, potentially.
Thank you. Any further questions, members? Okay, thank you then. So the recommendation is to approve the accounting policies for use in the 24-25 statement of accounts. Thank you, Councillor Booth for proposing, Councillor Thompson second. All those in favour? Thank you very much, members. That's unanimous. And I believe, if I'm correct, that brings us to the end of this evening's agenda. Thank you, members, for your attendance, and I close the meeting at 8:07.